So I'd like to officially welcome all of you to the Stockbridge Library's online poetry series. We are in our second year of the series, and this year our subtitle is The Refuge of Witnessing. And you will hear some discussion between today's poet, Holly Iglesias, and John Gillespie. John is really the reason this series exists. It was his fabulous idea and his contact with all of our poets and readers that inspired us. And just a few brief words about Holly. You'll learn much more about her work and her discussion with John and from her reading. She's the author of 3 poetry collections: Sleeping Things, Angles of Approach, and Souvenirs of a Shrunken World. She also is the author of Boxing Inside the Box, Women's Prose Poetry. And Holly's most recent collaborative chapbook is Myth America, not to be confused with Miss America. So I could rattle on, but rather than that, I will turn the program over to you, John, and Holly. Thank you for joining us. I'll turn the program over to the 2 of you.
That's great. No, thank you, Wendy. And Holly, thank you for coming. Yeah, Holly, I feel like Holly and I have talked 4 times in the last 3 weeks, which we have. So Holly has been on both of our first 2 programs, and then we had a pre-chat, and so no, Holly, it's great to have you here. So last year, the poetry was we called it medicine for the soul, and I think this year, I guess the turmoil in the world, the churn is still pretty intense. So where do you find refuge? Where is that? Where do you find that for yourself?
Well, I find it in a lot of places. It was a provocative topic for me, refuge of witnessing. I live in what was still is a refugee community. I married a refugee. I have often spent time trying to figure out what home means to me as a pretty grounded Midwestern person living in a lot of different places. And I think that the things that ground me, and a refuge is where you go to again and again for comfort and grounding. I made a list: objects, stuff, history, connecting the past with the present, generations, and languages itself. I live in 2 languages, which for a long time, I mostly translated myself inside my head. And now I just live in 2 parallel languages. So those would be my refuges.
And when I was, reading a lot of your poems, and the book that I have over here on the side, you grew up in St. Louis, right? Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that geography or that history still kind of a refuge for you? Because a lot of those poems really resonated with local color.
Right, definitely. In families, there are the people who go away and the people who stay. And St. Louis is really a place where people tend to stay. So going away, you carry your home with you inside you, but you're also really held by the people at home as still part of home. And the geography of St. Louis, which to me is the river, as well as just bricks, 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 bricks everywhere. And, pretzels sold on street corners stays with me very much. I think writing about St. Louis is a way also of me keeping it and abiding in it, since I can't live in it, because my children are here, my grandchildren are here.
Well, we've moved 10 times and we're finally in, we're in Maine, Topsom, Maine, next to Brunswick, near both of our kids. So we've been the ones that have navigated around the US. And, sometimes I'm envious of people that have stayed in one place that get to, live through a bunch of different eras.
The upside is if you move a lot. I've moved 33 times since I graduated from college. It's really easy to downsize. Because if you have to pack that stuff, it's like, nope, 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 nope. You just toss it all. And I actually, that's the poem I'll probably start off with, is about tossing things because of the moving.
Yeah, we've done a lot of tossing and right sizing and giving away and all those things that have to happen. So where does or how does refuge find a place in your poetry?
I guess I try to find a place for displaced things, orphaned things, displaced people. Oh, I thought he was going to go to his cool cat who was doing flips in the doorway. John, your cat was stealing the thunder.
Sorry, I had to grab your book. It was so I can't.
Right.
My arms are only, my arms aren't 8 feet long like a basketball player. So I got to get out of my chair to go to the other side of the room.
Chairs, right?
Yeah.
You can move in and out of the screen. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's just switch to the witnessing part.
Okay.
And, you and I have talked about this for a couple times. You've heard the first 2 sessions. So, what's your take on witnessing, just from, if you want to share personally or, with your poetry?
Well, when I read the title of your series, you asked those of us who had read before to respond on what we thought about it. And I loved it. And I was glad I got the opportunity to watch the first 2 and also to speak to you, because when I think of poetry and witness, I think of political poetry, like Carolyn Forche, Martina Espada, poetry of witness. And the more I thought about it, I think that art itself is a political thing. And particularly if you're going to draw on history, that's a political act in itself these days. So I find that most of what I write about is, it's the past that persists, that doesn't go away. And also how people love to just run as far from the past as they can. And it's still here. It's still here. And so even when I'm writing about 100 years ago, 200 years ago, it's always writing about now. So that's the witnessing I do, is seeing the then and now.
Yeah, and when I was reading about witnessing, part of the definition is, not only do you witness, but you then decide to take specific action.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say over the last, 2 or 3 years with, George Floyd, racial inequality, COVID, vaccine mandates or not getting vaccinated, it seems like, I don't know if we've shifted from witnessing to activism and people are just out in the streets more. I wanted to kind of just get your take on the last few years and how you viewed, I guess, the activism or protests that just keep going on and on and on.
Well, I think the arts have really been activated in a way probably not seen since the 60s and 70s that I know of, in response to atrocities like, police murders and weird responses to global pandemics and any number of things. I'll just say, put it out there, critical race theory. There, I said it. Okay. I just think that when you look at things creatively, and particularly in a medium like poetry, which engages the emotions and the intellect, just like documentary photography does that. You think you're just looking at this sweet black and white image, and suddenly, you know, your heart's broken and you have a new idea. That's very political to me. And I guess I have that in mind whenever I'm writing something. And I also want to say that when you use the word witness, and I went to the idea of political, there's also, I think, when you and I were conversing, that you were talking about during COVID and our really troubled and scary times, was to me more what I would call presence, like witnessing what's happening to us, witnessing where we are in this particular moment. And that, to me, as a writer, ties in very much with being a Quaker and learning that discipline of silence. And since I have a lot of really old friends here today, I'm sure they know how loquacious I am and how hard it is for me to shut up. And if I had not like spent an hour with my mouth closed every week for 25 years, I probably wouldn't have written anything. So that to me is part of your witness also, the being present.
Yeah.
And listening more than expressing, taking in rather than here's me. It's more like, what am I seeing? What have I heard? How will I shape this so that someone else can see it too?
Yeah. No, that's great. So do you want to read a few poems for us?
Sure, I'd love to. I wanted to start off with this idea of tossing things, because I love things, because I think it's so much easier to tell the big story with the little story. So I like to tell, like, nobody's going to stay awake when you say, let's discuss immigration in World War I. But if you talk about the stuff that's in your grandmother's sewing basket, which I have here, so I have her thimbles, my grandmother's thimbles in her sewing basket, but also 2 big bullets. What the heck is that about?
Oh man.
I mean, the woman's dead, so I can't say what's with the bullets. But I've come up with any number of poems that are explained to me why she'd have bullets in her sewing basket. Also in there were Rexall toothache drops.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I think
so that's why the way I write is these heaping of details and things, because we can relate to thimbles a lot easier than we can to anti-immigration feeling in the early 20th century. All right, so here's the poem I wanted to start off with. Set store by your trifles. I ransacked the crannies of my childhood. Cupboards, linen closets, desk drawers, toolboxes, duffel bags, medicine chests, lockers, pantries. To gather whatnots and doodads for comfort in some unforeseen future. Many moves have winnowed the loot, each abandoned house, now recalled simply by what was left at the curb or flung into the sea. Warped rackets, wedding rings, baby teeth. What little remains fits in a box, a candy box my father gave my mother as consolation for their many nights apart. The box that once emptied, she stashed in her lingerie drawer. Inside it, hankies her aunts had embroidered, holy cards of St. Teresa and St. Anthony, and her half of a heart-shaped pendant worn on a thin chain until he came home from the war. And here's the hearts.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's about tossing stuff. And then another stuff poem is about, I mean, also, I'm a Catholic school educated person from kindergarten through college, so it's pretty thick with me. And my sister and I are both thrift shop junkies. And I mean, she almost does it like an act of devotion. She goes many times a week. It's almost like her Yeah, anyway, so I decided to make up an order of nuns that only had 2 people in it. And this is their act of devotion. And they're called the Blue Sisters of Whimsy. One propelled by modesty, the other by desire, they progress as pilgrims from one junk store to the next. Their path by now a habit, moving from sweaters to dishes, knickknacks to books, seeking out items with depleted genealogies. A metal zipper, Melmac gravy boat, a brownie handbook, a mended saucer, St. Jude devotionals tied in string. Their mother was superior in all things but this, the fond look back. There's this collage artist, Michael Oatman, whose work I love, and he is a collector of stuff and images, and he has this quotation that moves me greatly, that we handle things and they handle us back. So when I'm handling these thimbles, there's just endless resonances that come from just this tiny little thing. And I think poems are like that, you know, they're little. And prose poems in particular, which don't even look like poems, they look like a press release or a, you know, cigar box. It's so much. Somebody in the study group I'm in just last week told me that my writing is like serving up history in a hoagie that has too much meat on it. It's like, wow, I want that on the back of my book cover. A hoagie with too much meat on it.
Well, listen, if Tom Brady can be a spokesman for Subway, I'm going to be submitting your name as an alternative spokesman for the super meat sandwich. Words included.
The super meat. Do you want me to read the miniature golf poem just to get that out of the way? John, I know you wanted it.
Well, my family is very competitive with miniature golf. And we've got plaques around the house. We've got scorecards. You know, it's like Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, and I don't know who else in a, you know, sudden death match. So yeah, our family is very competitive about certain things. So yeah, read it, because I may need to do some praying over the winter for a good spring season of miniature golf.
Okay. And since someone is here in the audience, can I name you, Damaris? Oh, just did it. Do you remember that you and I made a our own miniature golf course in my backyard, and my mother was not pleased. But
Love
it was fantastic. We had all sorts of goo guys and yeah. Can't hear you.
Holly, another hidden skill.
I know.
Oh, she's going to have to pay me not to out her on some of her other skills.
Uh-oh.
No, we're willing to pay that.
We also wrote a dictionary of slang terms and cuss words.
And I still have a copy of it somewhere.
Uh-oh. Okay, so here's the poem. And it's from the first part of this book, Sleeping Things, which is about being a Catholic kid during the Cold War. So if you were 8 years old and thought you had to convert Russia as well as save the crucifix from the jackbooted thugs who were going to kick this church door down, you had a very vivid imagination and sense of mission. So most of these poems are about how weird the world looked that we were living in, as well as this devotional liturgical overlay of all of it. It was a great seed bed for imagination. So this is a child's point of view. Small world. The garage sits at the corner of the yard, a kingdom with tiger lilies for a border. Fathers come and go, mothers stay and stay. Windows open, the common clatter floats out, radio, vacuum cleaner, squalling baby. The Friesens have a grandmother in their house. and the SPACs have a bachelor. Each night, I pray one Hail Mary for good grades, one for a vocation, and one for miniature golf. Maybe that was going to be my vocation.
I think miniature golf architect. I think
Yeah.
this will be probably your 4th or 5th
It's gonna
career.
come back. It's gonna
Subway
come back.
spokesperson, miniature golf architect.
Yeah.
Damaris, we're going to include you in on it too, because you're going to keep Holly honest in her new pursuits.
Oh, she has for many years.
On the other hand, Holly has been lax in keeping me honest about some of my pursuits.
Oh boy,
No.
oh boy.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, we have raised the fund for extraordinary content. So maybe we, Wendy, we should start accessing that money so we can get some really good stories. Only kidding, only kidding. Little Thursday humor.
Oh, that's funny. Well, can I quickly just give a shout out thanking
No,
all
just listen. This is,
my friends
we're not
from
scripted. Yeah,
school
give a shout out. Yeah.
and can you raise your hand if you went to school with me?
Oh
Can you
boy.
raise your hand if you're married to somebody who went to school with me? Yay. And my poet friends are here. Prose poet extraordinaire who has a book coming out, Landon Godfrey.
Ooh.
And my co-member in my writing group, which is Tres Abuelas y una Mamá, 3 grandmas and a mother, which is Carolina Hospital and Maureen Seaton and Nicole Hospital Medina. And our South Florida poetry journal, So Flo Pojo, extraordinaire person and holder of a monthly poetry event where you have to wear a hat called Keep Your Hat On, Lenny. So here's to everybody here and to
Yeah,
my
great,
Quaker
great.
writing friends, Steve and Brad, and to my friends in Virginia, Maryland, the one over. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here.
We're the only non-writers. We're just people who listen to poetry.
No,
Yeah,
your
but-
audience, very important.
I agree.
You're life artists. You're life artists. And hat maker.
That's right.
And barrette collector. Right?
Ooh, we need to talk.
Here's what you want. This is what I'm going to write from next.
And your friend Terry,
Idea.
Oh
Is
my
that great?
God.
Yeah. Anyway.
and your friend Terry is here.
Terry, Brad, Terry, you and I have on round earrings. Let's hear it for the earrings. I
Yeah.
know we got to get dressed up for these events, right?
Yeah, that's it. Well, we'll set a new dress code, starting in 22. We'll go casual for the rest of this year.
Okay.
Hey, I just want to let people know, I put 2 items in the chat. If you want to be on our weekly mailing list, we mail out a link to this week's recording, and then also next week's invitation with a Zoom link for the reading. So if you want to be on the list, you could just respond and say yes and give me your email address. We don't use the email for anything else. It's just goes out to let people know about the poetry. And then, we are looking for poets, starting in 2022 that want to read for the series. So if you're a poet and interested in that, I think, Holly, we're going to have you and your crew do, or part of your crew do, kind of a joint program.
All of our crew.
Yeah, in 22. So just check the chat. And if you're interested, just let me know.
And that book that Wendy referred to at the beginning is a chapbook that we wrote collaboratively. And the brilliant title, I'll just say it one more time, is Myth America. Here she comes, Myth America. Isn't she lovely? Okay, now I have to read a poem that has the word debris in it because Beth is here. And Beth, do you all know what debris is? New Orleans dish? She's the best debris maker in the universe. But this is a different kind of debris. And this is about my home place. It's about the Mississippi River, the father of waters. Father, won't you carry me, carry me? The first time I saw the Mississippi from the air, I knew my place. And I knew that home was a sinuous ribbon lacing east to west, past to future, bondage to possibility, appearing and disappearing like a snake in new mown hay as the sun flashed on its surface. Many times I have crossed the bridge that takes me home, then takes me away, by car, by train, and even on foot, the current electric beneath me as St. Louis crouches on the western bank like a weary roustabout. Each spring the river swells there, rolls out of its ancient bed to sweep away all that is dead or forgotten, all that is foolish or weak, the debris tumbling inevitably south, spinet and spire, cottonwood and calf. You haven't lived till you've seen a piano rolling down a river, standing there watching.
Oh, man.
Whole house is equally amazing.
A whole house rolling down, yeah. And the other shout out is to Landon, because we were writing partners in Asheville, without whom this book would not have happened. So thank you, Landon.
So Holly, let me then ask you, how do you link up the refuge of witnessing? We've talked about each one separately. I think that in a prior episode, people here haven't seen, someone was on a bus, viewing kind of a horrific scene. And in some ways, there was a refuge because there was space, there was glass between, them and the event. And I don't know if that refuge was good or not good, but there was like this protection between the witnessing effect and being in a place of refuge. So and not even that, but just how you see those two themes connecting or either not connecting.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. I think that people need refuge after doing a lot of witnessing because it's a lot of wear and tear to pay that much attention and take things to heart. And so you need to restore. It's like social justice activists. They have to take a break. I mean, they can't do that all the time. But I don't know as that's what you're.
No, that's what I was trying to get.
Linking something.
Yeah, I was just that's what I'm trying to getting at is, they can be separate, or like you said, after witnessing, you need to recharge. So there has to be a place of refuge. You can't keep up that intensity level for a long period of time. No, I'm just trying to play with the words and how you thought about it.
When you said it, it makes me realize, because I pulled a poem about the only mean nun I had in all my time in Catholic school. And it's hysterically funny. It's very serious, but I think humor really does a lot to take, it just takes you out of yourself. It takes you out of your head. It makes you laugh. And I think, well, Damaris might remember this event. So can I share it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the poem's title is Gesundheit. And I'm sure a lot of us will remember the Holy Childhood calendar on the wall. And as I said, I'm not making mean nun jokes here because I think that's a trope that doesn't really exist. This is the only mean nun I had, and I won't name her. Okay. Gesundheit. They say we are children of a new world, a world without war. Our enemies are now our friends. On the wall is a clock, a cross, and the Holy Childhood calendar. April's illustration, one of a boy in a robe emitting a faint light inside a carpenter's shop. I giggle, imagining him sneezing from the sawdust, This Jesus tucked in a corner with hammers and chisels. This child who sensed the coming of a world divided, heaven from earth, rich from poor, until sister demands that I stand up and tell the class what could possibly be funny about a picture of our soon to be crucified Lord.
Oh, God, yeah.
I couldn't stop laughing.
Oh, boy.
I really got in so much trouble. I just couldn't. I had to leave the room.
Mhm.
Anyway, Gesundheit, Jesus.
Hey, Holly, I went to a Catholic school for grades 1 through 5. Did you have Palmer penmanship?
You betcha.
Oh, man, I tell you, if there was one of your letters that was outside the lines,
Mhm,
boy, the ruler came flying out.
mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
there was a no, yeah. Do
Well, so
not
much of
write.
that is metaphorical,
Yeah.
writing outside the lines. Ooh, it doesn't take much. That's the upside of a strict upbringing. You don't have to do much to feel like you're really a wild and crazy person. You
I
don't have
know.
to damage yourself so much. You're just like, you know what I did? I laughed at the Holy Childhood calendar. Boom. Okay, so I don't have to become like a cocaine user. Yay. It's just easy to feel radical. Of course, that's easy in the Midwest, too. A lot easier than it is to be radical elsewhere. I'll just say that.
So, I want to make sure we're doing everything we like to do, before the hour evaporates, since
Yeah.
we're kind of halfway through. So, do any of the people on the call have questions or comments for
Yes,
Holly? There are
please.
some Holly with a lot of clapping, a heart and a flame. Myth America, love that title. You're getting a lot of emojis, whatever you call those things, symbols. So, does
But
anybody?
talk to us without emojis.
What's that?
I said,
Emo-
talk to us without emojis.
I have no idea. I usually use them rarely because I feel like there's too many you got to sort through.
I know
It's
you
like
got to be careful with those hands too, because you could pick the wrong one really easily.
Yeah, I don't want to do like a frown or a thumbs down when someone's like giving you a great compliment. Yeah, okay, forget about it.
Yeah.
I'll just observe that words are always a better refuge.
Spoken like a true librarian. Thank you. Yes, they are the best refuge.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? I mean, we're still gonna, we can do it a little bit later on, but I just want to make sure that there's.
Here's one from Carolina. What are you working on now? Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm working on this family memoir called Theories of Flight. And it's about the generations in my family and the places that they left and why they rooted so deeply where they did. And as I said, when I'm writing about something historical, I'm always talking about now as well. So when we look back and see their trials and their chaotic times and their Spanish flu, I mean, we've been here before. We have hated immigrants before. We have had pandemics before. We have had heroic people before. Yeah. So what I'm working on is that. I write a lot about my grandparents. And I'm also working on editing a collection of my mother's letters that she wrote to her co-workers. She worked in a defense plant and then they all dispersed after the war. GI Bill, getting college educations with the sweethearts. And she stayed on there and missed their company so badly that she wrote 9 of them and said, I just miss you so much. We were so close. We can't let this happen. Send me your letters. I will transcribe them and run them off on the office mimeograph and use the postage meter and send them to you. And I have all those letters.
Wow.
And if you want to see a picture of post-war America from a woman's point of view, it's stunning. It's stunning. So those are the 2 things I'm working on. Thank you.
So
Harold.
Holly, Lenny had a question. He wanted to know, what is your revision process?
Ugh. Well, there's a section in A River Runs Through It by Norma McLean, where the preacher father has the boys write an essay, and then he reads it and hands it back and says, cut it in half. And they bring it back and he reads it. You better cut it in half. So that's kind of my revision process. I just keep reducing it and reducing it. It always starts out somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 to 300 words, which I finally figured out. I didn't get to take it very seriously being a writer until my kids were grown. And it takes me about an hour or two, which is the time that a baby takes a nap. That's about how long I can sit. And then I go back and take words out and take words out and take words out until it's, remember those chunkies, those candies that were fudge blocks with raisins and nuts? That's what I'm going for. Like you can't eat a whole one. Yeah, that's my revision process. Can I read a?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I've got one that is from that memoir. And my grandparents' nicknames were Doodles and Dode. Is that cute or what? Doodles was my grandfather, and Dode, or Lefty, was my grandma.
Doodles and Lefty.
Doodles and Lefty, yeah.
It sounds like a gang.
I know, and they were just these dumpling sweet people that she used to say, oh, honey, he's so confectionery. Well, it's in here. Here, you'll see. And this again is the present is in the past and the past is in the present. Doodle between the first Great War and the next. Fatherhood arrived on a current of candy, Milky Ways, lifesavers, moon pies, all pointed to good fortune for the baby born with a sweet tooth. Doodles was buoyant, unflappable, one happy dad, so confectionery, Dode sighed. The cousins and uncles, the in-laws and maiden aunts sprawled beneath a cottonwood eating chicken and cake as Doodles waded into the Merrimack River. Floating on his back, he bobbed like a lure at the end of a slack line, glad to escape the pressures of the city. A proprietor now, a man of means with a store that grew busier by the day, the soda fountain and oasis for secretaries and postmen, milliners and mechanics, the counters heaped with cold cream and hair tonic, the stockroom jammed with jars of lanolin, boxes of mineral salts, bottles of tincture of iodine, of quinine, of gentian violet, and stashed away on the highest shelf, the brick that had broken the storefront glass, still wrapped in paper upon which was written, Kaiser lover. Baby powder and chewing gum, abundance and shame, all of it piling up like debris in a spring flood. And then the crash. Rough times for Doodles. Yeah. I think
Did Doodles and Lefty live near you?
Yeah, we all lived in St. Louis.
Yeah, nice.
They had moved from Southern Illinois, which was a, German farming town. And then he and his brothers moved to St. Louis. They all went to pharmacy school. There were 3 generations of Krummenacher pharmacists. At one time, I think there were 9 Krummenacher drugstores in St. Louis. Here's one of them right there. What else can I say? Yeah, I could talk forever about them, but I won't. And I have, I'll read you a sweet poem about Doodles at the time before this became so contentious. That era around the end of World War I was in St. Louis, the time of the East St. Louis massacre. when like 300, 400 people were killed in East St. Louis, and the Black neighborhood was burned down to the ground, and people fled across the bridges into St. Louis trying to find refuge. Talk about refuge.
Yeah.
And also there was a lynching of a white person in Collinsville, Illinois, just across the river, of a German miner who refused to take a loyalty oath. So we've had our chaotic times. I think we get moments of rest. But this is at a sweet time before all that stuff hit the fan. His real name is not Doodles, obviously. His name is Rudolph. So the title of the poem is Rudy and the Science of Appetite. There is nothing we cannot learn, dear, nothing we cannot do. For the world is our plaything, an oyster, a horse painted blue. A sea of wheat behind us now, drays along the market road, boys in a hired buggy behind the grange. The swing still hanging in the orchard where once my hands caught and pushed the small of your back till your shoes reached the sky and the cottonwood sighed for love of you. I love those people. How many of you have grandparent stories?
Only one.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Let's hear a grandparent story or image.
I mean, for me, I'd never met one grandfather, and the other one worked like in the coal mines of Pennsylvania. So he was always away. So maybe I saw him twice in my lifetime. So it was all grandmother influence. And, one grandmother was a camel smoking kind of card shark.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Card school. Yeah. I think I told the story. When you were 8 years old, you were considered an adult at the card table. So, yeah, there was no mercy. Yeah. If you made some dumb moves, you got called out by, someone that was, 40, 50 or 70 years old. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I wish I had more time with her.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's would love to go back in a time capsule and just soak in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
So Holly, are there any, once again, I don't know if I'm breaking a rule, are there any, new poems you want to share that haven't been published yet? I don't want to make that a curse or something. I don't know if you should, I don't know.
I've got some here. I'm happy to do new poems. Thank you.
Ooh.
I've got two. I'll do two new ones, and Catalina knows these, or you've seen them before. This is kind of the generational shift moment for my generation. It's got an epigraph from Shakespeare. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. And the title of the poem is False Spring, Ohio, 1970. Picture a girl in a macrame vest walking to class against a backdrop of barely budding trees. Another with untamed hair, rocks in her pockets, and some boys in t-shirts, some boys in button-downs, impromptu flags in their fists. Their brief past already points to this very moment. Little girls in Sunday dresses, blown to bits in Birmingham, a boy dredged from a Mississippi swamp. On the skirt of a pink Chanel suit, a stain shaped like a map of the future. Lunchtime in America, another grassy knoll. 13 seconds, 67 rounds, and the pool of dreams begins to drain as a head hits concrete, as legs buckle, as shoes stumble over themselves. The camera capturing a girl kneeling beside a body on the ground, her mouth enormous. The body's life leaching into the earth, the season passing well before its time.
Very nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Claire Baumgart wanted to know, how often do you write?
Claire.
Well, I'd have to come up with a poem every week for our writing group, right, Carolina? So every Thursday we're like, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. Sometimes something will just drive me to write. Like the 50th anniversary of Kent State and Jackson State, and asking students if they remember that picture, and they're like, what's Kent State? I'm like,
Oh,
okay. Sometimes it's a vocabulary word, you know, it's that nun thing with the Latin root words. Refuge, what does refuge mean? And sometimes it's, I can always write if I make myself be quiet and let my thoughts leave and I see what's there. So I probably write every week. And then the revision process is when I, try to bring something to my writing group and then get their very valuable input. I mean, because in a writing group, you're kind of teaching each other your own particular language and palette of colors and things like that. And your readers begin to know you better than yourself because you're in your head and they're the ones who are reading it. So that's also part of the process. And I will say that Beth and I were talking about this the other day of at some point, you're always writing. You may not be typing and you may not have a pencil in your hand, but you're writing because that very act of that keen attention is also writing, I believe. Yeah, thank you for that question. Let me read this one. It's refers to the Cuban poet Jose Marti, poet and patriot. And he's a jumping off point for, I think this started when we were doing free writing, Carolina. It just started somewhere and then you know how that goes, it went somewhere else. The title is Carbon Dating. And the epigraph is by Jose Marti. So I'll read it in Spanish first and then in English. Todo es hermoso y constante. Todo es música y razón. Y todo como el diamante antes que luz es carbón. And then translated, everything is lovely and lasting. Everything is music and reason, and everything, like the diamond, is coal before it is light. Marti, anguished and broken, was sent to convalesce in the Catskills, Major Médico al Monte. And from this cold and rocky landlocked place, he wrote the simple lines that continue to outlive him, endearing him to lovers and blazing patriots across the hemisphere. That tiny book, Versos Sencillos, wrapped in tissue paper, along with Nitza Viapol's Cocina Cubana, was put in my hand by my brand new mother-in-law, a head shorter than me and always dressed for mass, as I boarded a plane from Miami to New Orleans, where I would grab my passport and clothes from the house I shared with 6 other hippies on Panola Street near the corner of Joliet, close to a Winn-Dixie and the St. Charles streetcar, which began running in 1835 and at the time of my departure cost a dime. I would tell my friends that I married a guy who had fled the country to evade the draft. So I was moving to Spain, to Zaragoza, the capital of Aragon, which had been a Muslim state until the 12th century and a bastion of support for Franco since the Civil War. Sorry, I lost my place. A bastion of support for Franco since their Civil War. We lived there until our war ended, not yet aware that wars never end. And by the time Saigon fell, I had 2 babies, one naturalized, one native born, and a passport full of borders crossed, and 2 languages, neither of which had a word for what I learned of exile inside my own homeland.
Mm.
I need
Wow.
a nap.
Very nice, very nice. Woo.
Thank you.
So we're coming close to the end of our hour, and I encourage people to put more comments in the chat if you don't want to shout it out loud. Damaris, obviously I'm collecting money for stories. If you want to throw out a story, we're more than willing to put on a seatbelt and listen to it. But no, Holly, it's been another amazing hour. And of course, I feel like you've gone with, this is like our 4th, conversation over 3 weeks or 4
I
weeks.
know,
So
I've really enjoyed it. I've loved the poets that you had and the focus of it. It's really more a matter of like having people feel less. I mean, Zoom tends to be an observational thing unless it's a meeting of a group you belong in. So maybe how to get people to talk.
yeah, and last year after we, Wendy did the intro and we talked about COVID, the poets just kind of went on. And this year we wanted to make it more of a conversation and
Right.
have poetry, fit in between and as part of the conversation. So yeah, to me, it's my refuge. It's my weekly refuge. It's part of my recharge. As Wendy knows, I plug myself into the poetry wall, and I'm good for another 7 days.
Mhm. Mhm. Can I end on one
So-
that's really tiny?
So someone said, ask people to stay off mute if they don't have dogs, construction, or a natural disaster happening.
That's how you make Zoom be more interactive.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, it's actually
You
tricky
just
though,
stay
when
off
people,
mute.
Yeah.
when you have a lot of people in a Zoom room, it can actually, it can interrupt the audio. It just does get a little
Oh, a
messy.
feedback thing?
Yeah, I teach on Zoom a lot, so I'm familiar with it, but I do think it helps for people to stay off.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I actually just had the pressure washers go by like 45 minutes before this started. I'm like, seriously? They're doing pressure washing? No, don't do it. Don't do it. All right, let me leave you with one tiny one from,
Yeah.
it's just a slight, the phrases people use to end things. It's my great aunt's. Okay, old hat. Land's sake, the great aunt said over tea. The light behind them dappled, filtered through a riot of vegetation on the sun porch. Bristling ferns, philodendron that snaked along the sills, moss lacing into the litany that nudged time along. More's the pity. My, saints be praised. Who hasn't been in that living room? God. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Holly, and thank you everyone that attended today. Once again, a fantastic program. It will be recorded. And Wendy, what's the Stockbridge Library website address if people want to find out more?
I can put it in the chat, but it's very simple. It's stockbridgelibrary.org.
Yep.
All one word, stockbridgelibrary.org.
Yep. Great. Holly, thanks again. I'm
Thank
sure I'm going to
you.
see you like in another 5 days or something. I know we're
Well,
on
I'll
a
be there
regular
next
schedule.
week.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's
Are
good.
you, oh, you're not having it next week?
No, we're not having
right?
it on Thanksgiving.
Okay.
We're having it on December 2nd. So we're having Malachi Black on
Okay.
on December 2nd. Yep. No, we're I think December 2nd will be event number 60 or something. So yeah, all great stuff.
My hat's off to you all. Thank you so much for doing this.
No, it's
Thank
a
you,
real,
Holly, very much.
yeah,
Thank
real
you.
pleasure to do it. Okay.
Session.
Thanks for
Thank you,
joining.
everyone.
Bye,
Yeah, have a
everyone.
great day. Okay.
Thank you.